Regularly scheduled programming will not be seen at this time. Now, stay tuned for the following 13 WHAM special presentation.
It's hard, even the love of being a mother is not strong enough to stop your drug addiction.
I literally lost everything.
I guess I've been an addict my whole life.
Dope has just completely destroyed my life.
All of them parents.
You raised me up so
All of them the faces of addiction, in their own words, sharing their stories.
Like, you hear about somebody overdosing and your first thing is to go to that spot because you know it's good. Like, that's scary.
Some little kid rode up on a bicycle and said, "What are you looking for?"
Desperate to find a fix, almost to the point of no return.
Last October, on the 21st, my wife and I both overdosed.
A national epidemic. The president declaring a public health emergency.
It's time to liberate our communities from this scourge of drug addiction. Never been this way.
Heroin does not discriminate.
The search for a solution. Is this the best place for these four folks to be right now?
I think the simple answer is no. Well, I don't think that there's any single answer. I think it's got to be a large, comprehensive plan.
I don't know, they're obviously not getting to the problem of it.
You stay.
The system.
And drugs, it's a mental disorder, it's a mental illness, and I think it should be treated like one.
For me, the only thing that helped keep me sober over the past year was combining some form of treatment and mental health.
I guess talk to more people like us that's been through it and let the younger kids figure it out through us instead of for themselves.
Tonight, 13 WHAM goes inside the Livingston County Jail. Your voice, your future. The opioid epidemic, a jailhouse conversation. Good evening. The people with us tonight are all parents. One went to college on a music scholarship. Another is a diesel mechanic. And all are in jail or have been recently because of their addiction to heroin. I'll introduce them now. Kimberly Lavaseur, Michaela Wellitock, Arthur A.J. Johnson, and Sean Fleming. Also with me tonight here in the Livingston County Jail is the Livingston County Sheriff, Tom Doherty. Kimberly, you get to go first. I'm going to ask each of you to tell me your story. How is it that you are here? And share whatever you want.
This is my 12th incarceration, actually. I'm here on a petty larceny because I steal and have an addiction to stealing, which also goes with my addiction to drugs, which heroin and cocaine. So, yeah, I've been upstate. I've stolen from people I love.
Where'd you grow up?
Dansville.
Dansville. Talk about your childhood a little bit.
My father was an alcoholic drug addict. My mother, she was a great mom. She was a single mother, pretty much, single parent. She ended up getting addicted to painkillers, Percocet. Me and my sister are best friends, but we both have had our shares of addiction. Mine just happened to last a little longer. She's been clean for 3 years. My upbringing was that of a broken home. All my friends are addicts, the whole town, pretty much. It's hard, even the love of being a mother is not strong enough to stop your drug addiction. I don't know what it's gonna take to stop it. This is my 12th time being in here.
Kimberly wants to be with her 2-year-old son.
It's my life, my world, reason I live.
But addiction runs in her family and circle of friends. Her desperate need at times, she says, is more powerful than the fear of dying.
I didn't care whether I was alive or dead, as long as I was feeling good. Lucky I'm alive.
AJ, tell me your story.
Well, from Syracuse area. I was coming out here to visit my stepfather in Dansville. I've been an addict for probably about 5 years, heavy alcoholic before that. I started off using painkillers because I got hurt at work, threw my back out. My prescriptions ran up, so I ended up finding painkillers on the streets. Well, they got very expensive, so I ended up going to heroin because it was cheaper, worked just as effective. And then I got to the point where I had to have it. I couldn't stop. I'd get so sick to the point where I'd have to go get it before I could even go to work. I literally lost everything.
AJ had a lot going for him. He took great pride in his work as a diesel mechanic, a good job with good pay. But after a back injury, he was prescribed painkillers. Then the pills ran out. Desperate, he turned to more expensive drugs sold on the street, then a cheaper option, heroin. Soon, all of his money and possessions were gone.
I just drove down one road that somebody told me about, parked on the side of the road, and some little kid rode up on a bicycle and said, "What are you looking for?"
AJ says the harsh reality of full-blown drug abuse surrounded him.
I watched my girlfriend die, brought her back twice. Watched my brother die, brought him back once, all from overdosing. It's not a joke. It takes your life. I used to make probably like $700, $800 a week. I spent all of that on drugs. I have a 7-year-old son that took the majority of the money that I didn't spend on drugs. And I sold probably about, or pawned probably about $250,000 worth of tools and equipment that I've had to fill the void that I couldn't fill with cash.
And you were driving on 390 one day?
Yep.
What happened?
My brother's had a 10-day inspection in his car, and the cop that passed us must have seen it, the piece of paper in the window, and decided to pull us over and did a search in the car where he found my hypodermic needle underneath the seat. And I didn't have my card on me, so he brought me down here to get booked, basically, fingerprinted and mug shots, and they found heroin in my wallet, so I ended up doing 8 months.
How long you been here now?
4.5.
Michaela, tell me your story.
I guess I've been an addict my whole life. Everything that I do to the extreme, whether it's good or bad. When I find something I like, I just do it to the extreme. But I started using heroin in March 2015. I became physically addicted within like 3 weeks. My mother passed away April 2015. I didn't really want to stop using until July of that year. I couldn't stop without medical treatment. I couldn't stand being sick. My friend got into an accident. I had a Suboxone on me, and I got charged with possession, and I got put on probation. Violated probation because I relapsed after 1.5 years. And then I got put back on probation, relapsed again in end of July, August of this year. So I violated probation again, and now I'm here. Why does anybody do anything? Because it feels good? Because people are, I don't know, some people feel like they're lacking something and they think they're gonna find it.
At one time, Michaela thought she had it beat, and then relapsed. She says heroin became a necessity, but not for euphoria.
You're gonna get sick when you come off it, no matter who you are. And like, I wasn't using to get high, I was using because I couldn't stand being sick.
Now a young mother and in jail, she admits falling back is simple.
It's a disease. That's what diseases do. Diseases try to kill you. March of 2015, I started using heroin.
You lost your mother right after that?
Lost my mother about 33 days after that. So I don't know, I didn't really want to stop, honestly, until about July. I wasn't even getting high after like 2 months, 2-3 months of using. Like,
Meaning
I
what?
was just
Meaning
getting
that-
not sick, basically. I was just starting to feel like a normal person. Like, I wasn't using to get high. I was using because I couldn't stand being sick. I couldn't get out of I couldn't get out of bed. Like, my friend had to drive me to the city because I couldn't drive myself. Like, I was sick. Like,
You would drive to the city to...
get heroin.
Okay. How easy is that?
Pretty easy. I mean, it's pretty easy. It's
How much does it cost?
sometimes it's free. Like,
Why would they give it to you?
I mean, yeah, to try it, you know, you like it, whatever. I mean, it's, I don't know.
That's what they do. They give it to you so that you will buy it later. Is that correct?
More than likely.
You
But,
grew up where? Dansville, Wayland area as well?
I grew up in, yeah, Dansville and Wayland.
And your mom's death, and I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, and I'm very sorry for your loss, was from chronic alcoholism.
Correct.
So you had addiction in your family.
Yeah, and I'm also an alcoholic.
And you have a 2-year-old Odin.
Yep,
And where's he?
he is with my father right now.
How often do you get to see him?
Well, I'm incarcerated, so
Does he come here?
he's came here once, and I've been here since October 10th.
Sean, your story is, I mean, everybody's story is different, and yours also stood out to me because you were high school, Mount Morris High School grad, and you were off to
Niagara University.
Niagara University on what, a full scholarship?
Full ride scholarship. I grew up in a completely alcohol and drug-free home. Both my parents never drank, never did drugs, ran a very tight ship. My dad did. So when I got out of high school, I had drank like maybe twice by the time of graduation. Auditioned at Niagara, received the full ride scholarship for the music program.
For what? What did you?
Music performance.
Vocal?
Yep.
You raise me up so I can stand on mountains.
Do you still sing?
Absolutely. Not as much since I started using drugs and stuff. You know,
What kind of stuff did you like to sing?
I did a lot of Frank Sinatra, a lot of Michael Bublé, stuff like that. I actually worked with, my senior year, I worked with a producer down in New York City, created a CD. You know, I had big dreams.
More than I can read.
And I used to have an unbelievable drive for music that over the course of my year in college and since then I've just lost, and it only recently have I started to get back into it. I play 6 different instruments, and only recently did I actually take the time after I got clean to take some money, go buy myself a guitar and start playing again. You know, for my kids and I, they're all very musically inclined. You know, we used to, I can't tell you how many nights I sat around a campfire just playing guitar and enjoying life. You know, it's those things that I have to remind myself of to try to beat this. So I went to Niagara. I was there less than a semester, maybe a little over a semester. And in that period of time, I began drinking heavily. I got into doing drugs, and it got to a point where I just pissed my whole scholarship right away. They ended up coming to me and basically offered me the option to resign from college, or I was going to get expelled. So I chose to resign. Came home, met a girl, and started working right away, doing construction for a local family friend. At which point, about 6 months after I had been home from college, I found out that my girlfriend was pregnant, and I was there from day one. I watched my daughter be born. She's 6 now. And 2 years after she was born, I found out that biologically she wasn't mine when my ex and I split up. And at that point, I just kind of went off the deep end mentally. You know, she'll always be my daughter, but it definitely broke me in my mind. and from there it's just been a downward spiral. About 2 years ago, my current fiance was incarcerated for a little bit of time, at which point I had some of her kids plus my daughter, and I had always done pills here and there, but it got to a point where heroin was just way cheaper to do. You know, so I started doing heroin, and at that point I was a single father of 3, sometimes 5, depending on the given weekend, and you know, it got to a point where I just became overwhelmed, and I started using heroin to just escape life, to not even mentally be here anymore.
And you told me a story. Was there a point where you found yourself doing heroin with your father-in-law?
Yeah, that's actually why I'm in here. While my wife was incarcerated, him and I were using heroin together, and at certain times he would give me items to pawn, which ultimately led to me stealing items from him, and I ended up getting a grand larceny in the 4th because of that.
Sheriff, when you hear these, there's some similarities, but everybody's story is different. In your years in law enforcement, how has this heroin epidemic changed our world, do you think, or your world?
Tremendously. Absolutely. Even the time I've been in law enforcement, we used to deal with obviously alcohol and pills, and over the recent years we've seen the transition from a lot of pill abuse to heroin, fentanyl, basically whatever they can get their hands on to fulfill that craving. As you said, some variation in the stories, but also some similarities. If you listen, a lot of depression, a lot of turning to something to help their mental health issues that are going on. Where years past, we've always dealt with alcohol and alcoholics, and AA is very common, but you're seeing this heroin epidemic take on a new life and a new form where folks aren't just turning to alcohol anymore. They're turning to the streets once they can't fulfill getting that pill from a doctor. Also, you hear some stories like of an injury. We hear that story a lot. Other folks are just the opposite, and it's like a graduation through the various levels of drugs.
It speaks to the power of this addiction, which is where I want to go from here. AJ, let's start with you on this one. You were the one who told us about an injury. You were already an alcoholic, you said, but then an injury and you had a prescription. Some people are going to hear that story and they'll have had an injury and they will have been prescribed opioids, very common, and they will say, I couldn't wait to get off of them. For you, what was it like?
The pain was unbearable. I couldn't stand it, and then the doctor said, no, you can't have any more. I tried to get more from him because what I had wasn't working anymore. And he's like, no, we're just going to cut you off and stick you on Tylenol and ibuprofen. And I was like, well, that ain't going to work. So I ended up getting a hold of pills on the street, and one thing led to another.
But the addiction for you, you needed them for the pain, but then you had become addicted to the drugs themselves?
Correct.
How powerful is that addiction?
You can't get out of bed. I couldn't go to work. I had to do drugs just to function normally in life. It's pretty bad.
And then the level of drugs you're doing
increased.
Right, because you're not getting enough from the level you're doing, so it's a constant, I need more, I need more.
Yep. Then it was enough just to function, just to make it through the day. It wasn't taking away the pain anymore, it was just making it through the day.
AJ, if I may, when you first had your injury, I would assume you had a legal prescription
Yes.
through a medical doctor.
Yep.
And can you talk a little bit about that? Were you eventually cut off? Did you then turn to the streets, and roughly what were you using MG-wise? What were you paying, and how did you ultimately end up turning to heroin?
Well, I slipped a disc in my back, and they gave me hydrocodone 500 milligrams. And then I asked for 1,000 milligrams because it wasn't working. And they just said take 2 a day. And I only had 2 refills on my bottle. And then when that ran up, they wouldn't give me any more. So I knew a guy that had Oxycontins that I was getting, and they were a lot more powerful, stronger. I didn't need as much. And then eventually I needed more than just that. And he was charging like $1 a milligram, which went from $4 for a pill to $30 for the pill. And I was like, nah, I can't do that. So I ended up going to the city and getting $10 bag of heroin that lasted all day long.
How do you do that? How do you've never bought, perhaps never, maybe you had, but maybe you'd never bought drugs illegally before from a street dealer. You drive into the city and
park your car on the side of the road and somebody will come up to you and ask you what you want. It's pretty bad.
Wow. Michaela, do you remember how quickly the addiction grabbed you? When you
With
started
heroin?
Yeah, well, you said you were depressed as a child. You told me that. You had depression. And you were drinking by age 12 or so?
Probably. I mean, I had like a few drinks of alcohol when I was younger, but probably like heavily drinking like 15, 14.
And so you were addicted.
Alcoholic by 17.
You were addicted to alcohol, which is a powerful addiction as well.
Yeah.
When it came to the heroin, which you started in March of 2015, you said,
it took me 3 weeks to notice that if I don't do this for a day, I don't feel good. Like, I cannot go work a full day. You know what I mean?
And you were how old then?
I guess. 21.
21 years old. And what were you doing for work?
Farm work.
Farm work. But there's other people who can take an opioid and not feel an addiction. In fact, want to get off of it.
Not for 3 weeks straight.
Yeah.
If you're using it every day for 3 weeks straight, you're gonna get sick when you come off it, no matter who you are.
And Suboxone is a substitute to help you not use the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kimberly, the power of the addiction, how would you describe it?
I've been using for 12 years, and like I said, like with my kid, it's not enough. It's powerful. It makes you feel like crap, and then you feel like crap about yourself, and then it's a vicious cycle. You just keep using and using to try to get rid of them feelings. And like, you hear about somebody overdosing, and your first thing is to go to that spot because you know it's good. Like, that's scary. Scary.
You could hear about someone dying.
Yeah.
And you would go there to try to get what they had?
Yeah, because you know then it's good. It's powerful.
You talked about the power being, I mean, you're a mom.
Yeah.
What's more powerful than that?
Heroin addiction, cocaine addiction, because I'm also a cocaine addict too, so they go hand in hand for me.
So you're here in jail, you can't use.
Nope.
And I'm going to ask you later about where we go from here, but so you've been clean then?
40-some days.
40-something days. How do you feel?
Good. I feel good. I don't want to use again. I want to go home to my kid and just do that, but the reality is when I go outside, it's right there. I live in Dansville. Everybody I know uses one drug or another.
Sean, the power of the addiction for you, I mean, you were a guy who didn't drink or do anything in high school.
For me, mine kind of gradually grew, and like I said earlier, it was more for an emotional escape. Best way I can describe it to somebody who's never experienced it before is I literally fight a battle with myself in my brain on a day-to-day basis. You know, even so, being in here, you know, not necessarily craving it. You know, I did it at first, you know, but I actually celebrated a year of sobriety in here on the 21st of October. And even now, a year later, there's still days where, you know, I get thinking about my kid, or, you know, and it creeps right back up on me that quick, you know, just the mental obsession over it, you know. Even though I know I'm in jail, I can't possibly get it, but yet I'm still all day long sitting there stewing inside my own brain about, man, you know, how nice it would be to just escape for a little while, to not be in reality of where I'm at, you know.
What was it like for your family? You talked about your family being pretty straight and narrow. Yeah. When you went away to Niagara and then started using. It
crushed my family. You know, I've just in the past year have I started to rebuild a lot of the relationships, you know, with my brother. I grew up, my second youngest brother and I were best friends growing up. We were 4 years apart. And because of my drug addiction, led him into the world of drugs. You know, I don't want to say I was the first person to ever get him to try a drug, but I'm pretty sure I probably was, you know, and I watched him starting to go down the same path. Luckily he got out of it, you know, before trying anything too extreme. But, you know, it broke his and I's relationship. It broke my parents and I's relationship. You know, thank God they've stuck by my side through all this. And, you know, when it came out, because it came out that I was on heroin prior to me being arrested for anything. I was in family court. My daughter's mother had found out. Mind you, I was a father who had complete split custody. You know, most guys in New York and across the country, you're lucky to get 3 days, you know, get a weekend with your kid. You know, I had my daughter 5 days a week from the day she was born to now I see her 2 hours a week on a supervised visit with my parents. You know, dope has just completely destroyed my life, and it took only a 6-month period of time to do it.
AJ, another thing that people who are addicts deal with is the guilt. How powerful is the guilt on top of the addiction, the guilt of how you've impacted not only your own life, but the life of your child, the life of your family, the life of your friends?
Well, I have seen my son every day for 7 years until the day I came in here. And I couldn't see him. I haven't talked to him. I talked to him one time on the phone. My mom brought him 2 weeks ago to visit, and that's the first time I seen him, and he was crushed. He was happy to see me, but when he had to walk out that door, it wasn't easy.
Kim, the guilt?
I have 2 dead parents, and I put my mom through hell with this, so I have a lot of guilt there. My grandmother also died almost a year ago, and my reason for going to prison was because I stole money from her. So I have a lot of guilt, and it's hard being in here not having a substance to escape. Like, it is, it's hard, because then I'm stuck in my own head, and I have a lot of guilt, especially when it comes to my kid.
Michaela?
Guilt is probably the main thing that caused me to relapse this past time in August. The guilt about relapsing in February, basically. So that doesn't really make sense. Relapse because you feel guilty about relapsing. That's totally unlogical, irrational, but that's, I don't know, it's how it works. Like, I'm extremely impulsive. I don't know. I just gotta work on changing behaviors, I guess. I don't know.
All right. We've put you in this position. A mental health thing.
Yeah, I mean, addiction is a mental disease, just like bipolar is, just like depression is, just, you know, it's the same. It should be treated the same, I think.
That's a good time to turn to the sheriff. I mean, we are changing the way we look at this as a society. It gets into the crime and punishment thing. It gets into the mental health treatment area. And we're still, I think, as a society, searching for the correct balance. You know, is this the place for these? I realize it's not a choice right now, but is this the best place for these 4 folks to be right now?
I think the simple answer is no. We wish we had a place to transition these folks out of and into to get them the help they need. A lot of folks see the arrests we make, especially on Interstate 390, and they think, you know, we just hammer enforcement. And we do, to that point. But everything else that happens post-arrest, we try to assist with Vivitrol injections here in the facility. We try to have counseling and medical staff. We're trying to get navigators for when they get released out of here. But we're limited with our own budgets. So I guarantee if you asked any 4 of these folks, they'd say you're not doing enough in this facility, because it is a correctional jail facility, not a facility that typically would handle mental health or addiction. And, you know, the argument of this is mental health that caused me to use, you hear that a lot, like it is a disease. I think from where I sit that folks tend to use because of mental health issues. Certainly they turn to something. Even the folks who can turn their life around, be completely clean for years, whether it's alcohol or heroin, one bad day can send them right back into the spiral. And that's a scary thing to think about. And I'm sure for these folks, knowing I want to battle it I want to beat it, that it's a lifetime of this now.
Let's talk about the day there's going to come a day when you get out of the Livingston County Jail. Okay, for each of you. What's the, AJ, I'll start with you. You get out of jail. You get out of jail and you don't know what's next for you. What do you hope, where do you hope you go from here? What are your hopes, your dreams in terms of your life again, your rehab, and that temptation that's going to be there because of your addiction?
Well, first thing I'm going to do is go get my kid. Probably go talk to my mom because she's sick. But ultimately, I'd like to get my own business going. I'm hoping I still have customers out there. I've talked to them, a couple of them in here. I put money on their phone so I can diagnose them through a truck. But I still have customers out there that want me to work for them. So I want to get my own business going, but it's going to take a long time to get all my tools back and everything like that. So.
What about for your addiction? I mean, can you get out of here? And I mean, you have battled alcohol and heroin. That almost seems to me like the bigger obstacle than getting a business going again.
The hardest part of quitting was getting past the sickness. Once I was past the sickness, I've been trying to quit for a long time. I was buying Suboxone on the street because I couldn't get it prescribed. And I was trying to quit. I could get to that third day, but then I'd be right back out getting something else because I was sick to the point where I couldn't do anything. I've been in here long enough where I'm past that point. So I'm pretty sure I'm never going to touch that stuff again.
Alcohol too?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm going to get the Vivitrol shot when I leave here. And if I can get that on the outside, I'm going to do that also.
Yeah. Sean, you've been on the Vivitrol, correct?
Yeah, when I went to Clifton Springs about a little over a year ago, last October on the 21st, my wife and I both overdosed. We both received Narcan and were thankfully brought back to life. So I went off to rehab, she went off to rehab, and while I was at Clifton Springs, I was the first person to get the Vivitrol shot through them. They had just started the program there, and I've been on it ever since. I can't say enough good things about it. It honestly is what is attributed to my year of sobriety that I've had.
And what does it do?
There's a couple different ways you can get it. You can. I've heard that they now have an implant that goes in under your skin. I personally chose to get it once a month via a vaccine form, but there's also a pill form that you can take every day. But for me, you know, I kind of touched on the mental obsession of it. Once I get that Vivitrol, it helps relieve some of that. You know, I don't sit there and think about it on the day-to-day because I know mentally that even if I were to try to use heroin or any sort of opiate, I wouldn't feel it. So it deters you at that point.
You talked about you and your wife.
Yes.
Both overdosed.
Yes.
Both got Narcan.
Yes.
Tell me about that day. Where were you? How were you?
We were right in Mount Morris, and it's really sad and disheartening. She had just gotten custody of her kid back, her youngest son, and we both chose to use that day. And neither of us ever shot up, used needles. We both always sniffed, and I bet you it wasn't even 10 seconds after we each did a bag that she said she didn't feel right. And next thing you know, I was performing CPR on her. I did CPR for almost 5 minutes with a Mount Morris cop there helping me. They administered 6 Narcan to her to bring her back and took her to Strong. And while at Strong, I was out in the parking garage and I ended up having a seizure in the garage and overdosing in the garage almost an hour and a half later.
From the drugs that you had both done together?
Yes.
And where was the child that she had just gotten custody of again?
He was with his siblings at home.
He wasn't there with you?
No.
Okay.
He was at home with them. You know, I rode in the ambulance with her up to Strong, and then...
They talk about rock bottoms for addicts.
Yeah.
And some addicts have to hit rock bottom a bunch of times.
Absolutely.
That had to be a rock bottom.
It was, you know, and that's what made me choose. I chose to go to rehab. After that point, you know, obviously it came out to my family, what had happened and everything. So I basically had no choice. It was either, you know, put yourself into some sort of treatment program or be excommunicated from the family. So obviously I chose to go to CASA here in Geneseo, and from that point I chose to go into inpatient, and that's when I received the Vivitrol and was able to continue with that since.
So what's your hope for the day you get out of here?
I'm not gonna lie, I am scared out of my mind. You know, they do a AA meeting that they bring in once a week, and I've been actively in the program for a little over 1.5 years now. And I was talking about it the other night, just even though I know I'm getting, because I'm offered the Vivitrol before I leave through CASA, but administered here at the jail. But I'm terrified of going home. You know, and it's sad to say that I feel more safe from myself in jail than I do at home with my kids and my wife and my family. You know, I mean that just goes to show how powerful this is. You know, even though I know that I can't use because of the Vivitrol, you know, there's so many decisions that I could make over the next 6 months, whether it be stop taking Vivitrol or this and that, that would allow me to go right back to my old ways.
You say you can't use because of the Vivitrol. Why is that?
I just wouldn't feel it.
Okay.
It's an opiate blocker.
Okay. Okay. So you could use, but it wouldn't. Yeah. You wouldn't.
Basically, you know, I could try to use. I wouldn't feel it, which at that point would be just a waste of money.
And you have precipitated withdrawal, which is 10 times worse than regular withdrawal.
Instantaneous withdrawal.
Yeah.
What is that? Explain to me.
Like it hits right away.
If you use
Heroin while you're on the Vivitrol, yeah. I watched my fiance actually have like a seizure pretty much on the floor 3 days after he had Vivitrol and tried to use. And for 72 hours, he was stuck in bed, sick.
Where's your fiance right now?
Livingston County Jail.
Michaela, you don't know when you're getting out,
No.
but when you do, what is? Do you have a plan? Do you have a hope? Do you have options for success?
Well, I'm gonna work and go to meetings. That seemed to work pretty well for me last time. Not this last time, but when I first got clean off heroin in 2015, I was clean for 1.5 years before I relapsed in February 2017. So I'm just gonna try, but I stopped like working on my recovery every day. I thought I was kind of in the clear.
Is that a common mistake that you?
Yes.
You think you got it?
Yes, because it never goes away. We're sick, you know what I mean? Like, we're sick. And it's the same with like people with depression. Like, you have to work on it every day. Sure, you can take a medication to be assisted, but it's not going to go away.
So for the rest of your life, and that's true for all of you, you realize that, you know, you're however old now, but 10 years from now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now, you will have to remember, and let's hope you all get there and are successful, that you're going to, even then, even all those years later, you are still an addict, you are still on that far away from back to what got you here.
I think it's similar with people who suffer from like severe depression with like suicide, you know what I mean? Like, we can help people who are suicidal. I think it's might be the same, like, not the same, but similar, like, impulses, I guess, kind of. Because, like, when you want to use, you're like, all it takes is a half a second and you're doing it, you know what I mean?
Let's talk a little bit
That
about
person that wants to jump off the bridge, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a metaphor, but all it takes is a half a second and you're on your way, you know?
It's too easy to get.
Let's talk about the solutions now. We'll start with Tom, with Sheriff Doherty. First of all, when you've mentioned that this is a jail, it's not a treatment facility, and then we've heard that Livingston County and probably a lot of other places don't have a lot or enough treatment options. Where should we be going on this? In other words, when they get out of the Livingston County Jail, you don't want to see them again, at least not in here.
Correct.
What's in your mind, what should we as a society be working on to maybe send them on their way with more hope that they're not going to come back, or even worse, lose their lives?
Well, I don't think that there's any single answer. I think it's got to be a large, comprehensive plan, and we've started that here in the county. Certainly more work to do, but I think the single most important is getting to the youth, and we started the HERO program, getting into the schools, bringing inmates out of the facility that are willing, just like these folks were willing to talk to you today, putting them in front of 11th and 12th graders. And really, I think the age should even be younger, but we get a little resistance from parents and schools, understandably. But giving them the live, in-person scenario that landed that person in the jail, that's powerful. The kids will listen to them. I can say as much as I want, don't use drugs, and they say you're a cop. Teachers can say the same, they say you're a teacher. Parents, the same. So when it's a real person with a real problem that's incarcerated, the kids respond to that. So I think the HERO program, we got to continue to build that this year. All Livingston County schools have been agreeable. So that's our number one. Several following steps. We've done medication drop boxes throughout the county through several partnerships. And partnerships is key in all of this. Getting the medicine cabinets emptied out so kids don't experiment with Oxy or Hydros or any of those things that lead more to addiction. We did this plan where we open it up that, yeah, we are heavy on enforcement in this county, and our crime's down 30% with property crimes because it's folks just like these that are out stealing. And I bet you they wouldn't steal when they're clean and sober, but they get that craving and they don't have any money in their pocket. I bet you if you asked them, they would steal from anybody. Doesn't matter if it's their mom, their dad, husbands, wives, children. I mean, we've seen it all. If it's not bolted down, they're taking it, and you heard pawn several times. They take it, they pawn it, and we can't get it back.
I was told once that drugs, and I'll let you go on from there, the drugs, you raise your kids, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And then drugs, whatever drug it is, teaches them the exact opposite. It teaches you to be a good liar, to cheat, and to steal from anybody.
I would guarantee you these four are all master manipulators. They can lie with the best of them, they can connive, and they can get their people that know them very well to believe them.
True?
Absolutely.
I think everybody's a manipulator in their own way, to an extent.
These folks just have the addiction drive to do it better than anybody else, and they succeed a lot of times. We've had a lot of folks that we've arrested that the mother or father will call, and they said they had no clue at all that their son or daughter was using heroin. Maybe thought some weed here and there, but not ever heroin.
There's a big difference between heroin and other drugs too. If a kid's nodding out, they're probably using some sort of opiate.
They can't get out of bed. Like,
Right. Puking, diarrhea, shakes, irritable. If they look like they're falling asleep, that's what nodding out is.
it took me about 2 months, and I was honest with my family. Like, I need help. Like, I'm going to the city. Bye. Like.
Yeah. The sad part is that to the folks who will respond on like a Facebook post and say, don't go after these low level, go after the dealers. Well, we'd love to go after the dealers. And if people give us dealers, we go after them. A large amount of those folks are not in this county. They, it's typically a trip to a large city on a street corner. But what the arrest does do is, again, it reduces our property crime because they're not out stealing. But larger than that, it gives us control of these folks to put them in a facility to then try and get them the help, because we opened it up countywide, said we won't arrest you. Like, this isn't about arrest to us. We know we're not going to arrest our way out of this. If you have an addiction problem, come to us, turn in your drugs, and we'll immediately get you involved with CASA and mental health. And we had all these great partnerships. And that was over a year ago. And to date, only one person has taken us up on that, and it was a marijuana pipe that they turned in. So no folks like yourself have taken us up on that. And that's disheartening when you're trying your best. But I think also all of you would be under an agreement that you wouldn't go turn your drugs in or your needle in or say I want help until something like an arrest happens.
Or if you're scared of getting arrested for giving a cop drugs, I don't want to be charged. I got charged with 1 Suboxone, and I'm dealing with this crap 2 years later. Like, I don't want to have a bundle of heroin and get charged with a bundle of heroin and get a felony. I'm not a felon.
Even if they say that
You know what I mean?
even if they say you can turn it in without repercussion, your trust level is not there.
Oh yeah, my trust level is not there at all.
No.
Yeah.
That's scary. I do not want to be a felon.
What could have, going back, and we're going to continue to talk about solutions, what could have changed it for any one of you? Was there one thing that could have changed it, or was this a path that you could not have avoided?
Being able to get into a detox quick. I would have never gotten charged with possession if I was in treatment. Like,
or would you be better? Would
been.
you be an addict still, or would you?
Yeah, you're always an addict once you're an addict.
But would you? I'm sorry, that you're right.
Would I have relapsed? Possibly.
Yeah.
Probably. I can't sit here and say I'm never going to relapse again. Like, and no matter where you go for treatment, they will tell you relapse is a part of recovery. But nipping that relapse, like, in the bud before it turns into a full-blown binge, I think is a lot of the solution, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. Like, I don't know.
Kimberly, if I made you the benevolent dictator in charge of all this, you're the drug czar. What would you change? What would you do you think to what would have the biggest impact on the heroin problem?
Maybe more funding for little counties like this, for more rehabs, mental health. Jail isn't the answer. Like,
Well, and let me talk to you for 1 second. One of the things that people say is, well, rehab, but so many people fail at rehab the first few times they go. So they say, well, that doesn't work. But
maybe a different kind of rehab. I'm not sure exactly what I mean by that, but something different. Something that's never been thought of maybe before.
Or like they do in Pennsylvania with the mental health.
Right.
What
But
is
they
that?
I
have
heard a lot of good things about that.
They have mental health and MICA programs here in New York, but they don't have a lot of them, which is mental health and substance abuse together.
And I wasn't saying, I want to make clear, I wasn't saying rehab isn't good and doesn't work. I was saying
Right.
that sometimes it takes a bunch of tries at it because of the power of the addiction. And AJ, what would you do if you were in charge of solving the problem?
I guess talk to more people like us that's been through it and let the younger kids figure it out through us instead of for themselves. Like, lead by what we say, not by example. Because there's really nothing you can do to stop it. It's just going to happen one way or the other. It's all going to depend on the younger generations and what they want to do.
You said earlier, though, it was too easy to get.
It is. It's extremely easy to get. Like I said, I've never even been into the city before, and I just drove down one road that somebody told me about. I parked on the side of the road, and some little kid rode up on a bicycle and said, "What are you looking for?" And he came back with an adult. And I went to the guy's house.
I can tell you right now that I've been to this city many of times, cop drugs, and there's a cop that's a little ways back, and I hurry up to get out of there, but you don't see him picking up any of the people I just went to or that ran up to the car.
Because they're runners. They're not the actual dealers. They just run for the actual dealer.
You're in charge, AJ, or Sean. What's your solution?
For me, the only thing that helped keep me sober over the past year was combining some form of treatment and mental health. You know, I think that's a common theme in addiction is wanting to escape or depression or whatever it may be. And for me, it took addressing a lot of those issues from, you know, per se my childhood all the way up and through to my daughter being born and all of that before I kind of figured out what the root of my addiction was, which was, you know, a lot of these traumatic events that have happened have led me to use to try to escape all that. You know, Kimberly talked about the MICA programs and stuff. I know at Clifton Springs, they claim that they're a MICA program, but I can tell you right now, I didn't speak to one psychologist or therapist or anybody while I was there. You know, it was, okay, you're locked in a facility similar to being in jail with more freedoms, and you're staying clean. That's all it really was. You know, I mean, obviously we went to classes and seminars and all sorts of stuff, but to address the issue, I think it needs to be on a wide, broad span of different services, you know, CASA, mental health, all of that comprised into one, to get people that have addiction help.
Are we to the point now where we have to rethink the combination of, you know, incarcerating people, or rethink the incarceration of people who are here because they're addicts?
Yeah, I think if we had alternatives to that, we would certainly explore that. I mean, it would ultimately be up to the judge, where a judge determines to send them. But as law enforcement, like I've said a couple times, we know we're not going to arrest our way out of this heroin problem. It comes down to education, awareness. Yes, enforcement is a part of it. Counseling, mental health, navigator programs once they are released.
How much of this is on the addict and how much is beyond their control? Michaela?
I would say somebody who is actively using heavily, like 90% addiction, 10% choice. Somebody who's clean and makes the choice to use, I'd say probably the opposite.
I think when you initially do it, it's your personal choice, but after that, once you have that addiction unleashed in your brain, it can hit you again at any time, whether you're clean. I was clean for 22 months, and I came home, and a month later, I was putting a needle in my arm again.
Your choice was made for you by a
prescriptions.
Yeah.
And then it was snowballed from there. It was definitely took over. I couldn't control it anymore. It was either be sick or go get drugs.
To me, it starts out as a personal choice. Best way to describe it would be like a light switch, you know, A and B. And after that first time you use, you switch to the B position, and it's over from there. You know, I can't tell you how many times I felt like I was completely not in control. You know, I'm on my way to the city, and I get to the city, and I'm like, how the did I end up here?
And the fact that it's killing people every day, all over the place, doesn't deter you from making that drive or putting that needle in your arm.
I want to go to that spot.
It's a disease. That's what diseases do. Diseases try to kill you, right?
And when you're far along in your addiction, you're like, well, my tolerance is probably higher than theirs. I'll be able to be all right.
Handle it.
I'll do 2 more than they did, and I'll still be all right.
And see, for me, a lot of times, I didn't care whether I was alive or dead, as long as I was feeling good.
What do you like about yourself? What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I've always worked my off for everything, and I actually chose to stay in jail instead of going back out on the streets because I knew I would just relapse and go right back to where I was.
Sean, brag on yourself for a second.
I've always been a hard worker. You know, I worked with my father from a very young age as a helper when he was doing his diesel mechanics. He has his own side business, and so that was instilled at me in a very young age to work hard for the things that I wanted. And I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve. You know, that was kind of the main reason I did this. You know, I was a little apprehensive at first when some of the deputies came to talk to us about it, but you know, it ultimately came down to wanting to, even if it only helps one person, you know, to hear what we all had to say today, then you know, it was worth it to me. You know, and a lot of the guys that are in the dorm and in the pods here, and you know, they kind of look at you funny for wanting to talk to the news about something like this.
Michaela, brag about you.
Well, I think I'm kind, compassionate. I think I'm a pretty good person, despite being an addict. I know I'm a good person, you know what I mean, but I just got some issues.
I'm a good mom. I'm a good sister. I'm passionate about, I want to help others like myself. I don't know what exactly. When I was young, I wanted to be a lawyer. Felonies, you can't do that now. So I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm funny. I'm the goofball in our pod. So I like to make people laugh. Makes me feel good.
What do you hope comes from this?
I hope that when you air this, that the viewers take the time to listen and try and understand their stories, and that this is a real problem. Even if they have no connection to any of it, it could be them. It could be their extended family, it could be a close family member. There's a lot of inmates here that aren't gonna come and talk to me or you about their problems, and I commend them for doing this, and this will make a difference. I firmly believe that. This will make a difference when people listen to an actual person going through it.
Kimberly, Michaela, Sean, AJ, we wish you all the best, and we thank you for doing this with us tonight. And I'm completely hopeful and optimistic that I can call all you guys in 10 years and your lives are going to be going real well, and that you've helped some others along the way. Thanks so much. And thank you for joining us tonight. Glad you watched.